I just want to point out this is not me asking for somebody to talk
Exactly.
to a Hindu deity. I know who Ma Durga is. Jennifer doesn't. I've traveled through India from Kerala to Kashmir. I
And I
know
must
they,
thank you,
yeah.
that's so thoughtful of you to, clarify
I just
that.
want to explain. I must tell you, and it goes to these comments that have been on your page. I was reluctant to share. I realized if I don't share it, then I'm not being honest about what people are saying. Because if I don't tell the truth about what they're saying, word for word, then somehow I'm hiding what I'm doing. Non-judgmental acceptance, indescribable joy, unconditional love. 85% of the people who have a near-death experience that. It's important to remember that there's magic in every lifetime. Love is all there is.
Namaste. Welcome back.
Namaste. How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
I am fine. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm very good. I'm sitting here with my statue that I got in India.
It's Mahadev, right?
Well, let's
It
see
seems like,
now.
oh, it's Buddha.
It's
Blue
Buddha,
colored Buddha. That's a unique one.
blue Buddha. Yeah, why not? Very good. Yeah, I know I have a number of things here. I get to travel around the planet. So how have you been? I haven't seen you in what, a couple of weeks?
Yeah, yeah. After the last podcast, we haven't been in any
Yeah.
conversation.
Well,
And
let's begin by me apologizing to your
yeah, sure.
viewers. I want to point out because I apparently some of the comments in that people write about, people were offended by what I was saying about, and I want to apologize because
That
I don't
was
mean.
a misunderstanding.
Well, let's put it this way.
Sure.
I don't mean to disturb anyone's beliefs or religion. Let's be very clear. The way I approach the work that I'm doing, which is filming people under hypnosis. I've done about 200 of those. And those hypnosis sessions are 4 to 6 hours long. I don't ask any questions. I'm just filming. The hypnotherapist asks the questions, and the person who's doing the session answers. Then, beyond that, I do guided meditations with people, which are anywhere from 90 minutes to like 2 hours. And generally, they're with people who've already done hypnosis or they've had some event in their life that makes them feel like they've communicated with loved ones off stage. And the third methodology that I've been working with are
Hmm.
mediums who work with law enforcement. So I know how effective they are. They work with, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They work with Los Angeles Police Department, New York Police Department. So I'm asking them to answer questions that I have. And so I just want to point out the work I'm doing is collecting data. It's not my opinion. It's not a theory. It's not a belief. There's no religious belief associated with what I'm doing whatsoever. I'm just asking questions. And so when I say casually, it sounds casual. It sounds like I don't care about it. When I say that, let's say Jesus shows up, which I don't think will offend anybody, but when I say that Jesus shows up, I don't can't see him. I can't hear him. I have no idea what the person seeing him is seeing, but he's shown up so many times that I ask the same questions. And in terms of the data, in the studies that have been done about near death experiences, where people, have that experience of leaving their body and then coming back, 15%, 15% of those experiences report seeing Jesus, whether they believe in him or not. So they could be atheists, they could be another faith, another religion, doesn't matter. but they're seeing him and they're saying, he's interacting with me. He's telling me something. So in my work, what I'm doing is I'm filming, and a person says they're seeing Jesus. And so then I ask the same questions that I ask everyone. So, for example, when I was working with Jennifer Shaffer, who works with these different law enforcement agencies, she was accessing her father who had passed away. And of course, a very delicate subject, because I don't, I'd seen her get very upset when she felt he was in the room. And so I asked a series of questions about his journey, because when you get someone to talk about what's happening to them now, they can't focus on the emotion of them being gone. So the first thing I asked him, because his daughter was crying, I said, can he tell us an effective way to help with grief? And she said, I am hearing him saying, try to move grief to nostalgia. And I said, what does that mean? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, your father's here. Let's ask him, what does he mean by that? And he said, grief is mostly sad memories. And nostalgia is a combination of both happy and sad memories. And when you can move from grief to nostalgia, you begin the healing process. It's a very profound way to put it. And then, because here's somebody talking to us from the other side, I said, so tell me, are you attending any classes? And for people who've read my book, Flipside, or seen my work, know that I talk about classrooms quite a bit. People seeing themselves in a classroom. I don't, but I ask, what does it look like? I mean, I must say, in the 6 hypnotherapy sessions I've done myself, in a number of them, I've seen myself in a classroom environment. So I'm familiar with what they're talking about. But in this case, I asked her father, who was a Mormon bishop, from the Mormon faith. And I said, what are you doing in the afterlife? And he said, I'm taking an astrophysics class. And I said, oh, can you show Jennifer, your daughter, that class? And then she had this visual that she described of traveling through deep space, coming upon like a university setting, and inside was this auditorium with hundreds of students. And her father said, of course, she's saying to me, my father said, don't let the way the teacher looks freak you out or be problematic. And I thought that was unusual. And so sure enough, there is a teacher that he's showing her. She's seeing it. She's seeing this teacher who's wearing a cape. You can't really see her face. Now, just as a person I'm a storyteller. So when someone is telling me a story of something, I have to think to myself, is this invented? Is this made up? Where is this coming from? But the details are so specifically not of our world. We're in deep space. We're in a classroom. And he's telling us the classroom is an astrophysics of other universes. Kind of a mind-bending concept. And I then casually say, well, can I ask the teacher a question? And so the teacher then turned to us, let's say, and Jennifer's seeing her. I can't see her. And she describes her as this woman who's partially a woman and partially an octopus or a creature of the sea. So it's the skin color of a fish, of an animal, a fish, whatever. And she can see her in this hooded cape. And she has 8 arms. And so the father, it said, like, don't let her, the way she looks, freak you out. So he was warning his daughter, like, this might freak you out. But now but I'm thinking this is a professor. This is somebody who's teaching. So why be freaked out? Teachers look different all over the world. So I then engaged the teacher in some questions Like, what is this class you're teaching? What are your teaching methods? What kind of things do you do? I ask those simple questions. And then the person who's seeing them gives me those answers. And I feel like, well, I'm just laying out data. And then Jennifer and I have been to that classroom enough times that the next time that I went back, I asked her if people on Earth referred to her as a particular name. And that's when she said, people refer to me as Ma. And the next time that we spoke to her, I had looked up who Ma was with 8 arms. And I said, do people refer to you as anything besides Ma? And Jennifer said, yes, there's another name here. I think it's Durga. So it's not,
Richard,
you see? So I just want to point out, this is not me asking for somebody to talk
exactly.
to a Hindu deity. I know who Ma Durga is. Jennifer doesn't. I've traveled through India from Kerala to Kashmir. I
And
know.
I must thank you,
Yeah.
that's so thoughtful of you to, clarify
I just
that.
want to explain. I want to
Yes.
explain that when I say these things, like Jesus is in the room, I've had, let's say, out of the 200 sessions that I filmed, and I don't know, the book, The Greatest Story Never Told. I wrote a book about it because the head of Paramount Studios came to me and said, you need to write a book about all these interviews you're doing with people who are seeing Jesus. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Sure, why not? And so he wrote the foreword to that. David Kirkpatrick, who also ran Disney, which, by the way, he fired me when I was a writer, young writer starting out. He fired me off a project. And then all these years later, here he is saying to me, you need to write a book about this. And these are interviews with people, I'm not seeing the guy. I'm interviewing people who are saying, he's here. And I ask him questions about his life and his journey. So what happened? What happened to you? Is the Bible accurate? That's the question. And I had no idea what he was going to say. I mean, he could have said, yeah, it's absolutely accurate, but he did not. And he's done this over the past 20 years. Every time I ask the same questions, where he says the Bible, think of it as metaphor. People trying to tell the story of humanity vis-a-vis what happens after we leave the planet. So think of that. So that idea is really just imagining, it's not just religious people that I'm speaking to, clearly, but in 20 years, at first, I must tell you, and it goes to these comments that have been on your page, I was reluctant to share that information. And I realized if I don't share it, then I'm not being honest about what people are saying. Because if I don't tell the truth about what they're saying, word for word, then somehow I'm hiding what I'm doing. And I thought, it has nothing to do with me. I'm filming. People are saying, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. And it doesn't, and I would argue, it doesn't diminish faith. It doesn't diminish, because what these people are saying is
No,
we
no, Richard,
exist.
allow
Oh,
me.
go ahead, please.
First of all, I also need to apologize to those viewers who feel a bit offended, and you clarify it very correctly. Thank you so much for that. And let me give my opinion on it. I mean, not an opinion, my understanding. I am, as I explained before, that I am not an elevated soul or something that understand all the metaphysics, philosophy of Hindu cosmology. But
Sure.
still, there is a thing in Indian beliefs, the Sanatan culture, that is the idea of Ishta Devata, the personal god. There is, of course, the core idea is the ultimate godhood. And that godhood is irrespective of any gender or any form at all. And we perceive them in different forms. So people in the West or who don't understand Hinduism correctly, they may say that Hindus have so many gods, they worship in idols and all. But the
Right.
core idea, if they dig down, if they have the time to dig down, dig deep into Hinduism, they will understand the core idea is about the ultimate godhood, which have no gender, no form. And there is also this idea, as I was telling you, that the Ishta Devata, the personal god, and different people perceive them differently. There is an idea sometimes by generation implanted in them. So it seems like that those people, they have that view, the vision of, and of course there is the spirit who are elevated to a level that they become gods, like our idea of Saptarishis, the seven seers, or the many elevated soul, elevated seers that
Hmm.
described in the Puranas, in the Upanishads. They, there has been accounts of their giving advice to gods themselves.
Sure.
So there
Sure.
is an idea, we Hindus who understand Hinduism and who we go through the scriptures very well, we are very comfortable with that idea.
Sure. I
And
understand. And
but
let
I
me just
also
say,
don't blame them who got offended, because nowadays what's happening is Hinduism got so many criticism, and it's kind of to demonify Hinduism, the Sanatan culture. So that may be some prejudices they have, but of course we have to clarify it, and thank you so much for that.
well, and I must say, you just mentioned it, which is there are accounts in the scripture, in the historical records that, and of course, India being a culture much older than almost all of them, there are reports, and the point is, where do reports come from? And the idea is because someone lived 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, we have a tendency to sort of let go of the fact that they were on the planet and getting a report. It's an argument that people will say when talking about the Bible, the Jewish religion or the Christian offshoot of it, that people in the Bible's like leave the dead alone. That's a comment that people say all the time. However, everyone that was a prophet within the context of those conversations, they were hearing from people off stage. They were hearing these things. So when you gather data, however data comes from, and so I think the answer is if whatever you're following is true, then it should be consistent in the data. Stuff doesn't become data unless it's consistent and reproducible. So that would mean, let's say, and in terms of Jesus, that would mean you take 50 people who claim to see Jesus, claim to interact with him, hear something from him, and like I said, 15% of the people who experience near-death experiences see him, whether they believe in him or not. However, it's very interesting. There's another statistic that was left out of Dr. Grayson's book After, which is that 85% of near-death experiencers report meeting God or source. And they come away from that experience feeling unconditional love, non-judgmental acceptance, or indescribable joy. Now, what's interesting about those three terms, non-judgmental acceptance, indescribable joy, unconditional love, 85% of the people who have a near-death experience that. In my research, I'm filming people talking about the afterlife, and what they say consistently is that we go home, that when the play is over, everyone drops their props and costumes and returns home. That's the word they use. It's not my word. They're the ones saying, I went home. I would ask, what does that mean? Well, this
And the
non-judgment.
methodology you are using, it's profoundly based on meditation. And
Well,
in
okay, hang on a second. But I just want to point out,
yes,
meditation is based on that, but this is still data. So the
yes,
people I'm
yes. No,
talking
no.
to,
The point
I'm
I
just
am
saying,
trying to
yeah, yeah,
go
I
to,
understand. So it's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing, which is the people who've studied meditation have heard these things, have experienced these things, and
like
they're
we
reporting it.
Hindus in Sanatan, our civilizational values, our cultural understanding. My perceived idea is that, not perceived idea, is in general that we are part of the Godhood, the Paramatma we call it, or there are other names for it,
Yeah.
Parabrahman also, and we are part of it. Every living soul has the part of that Paramatma, and when we have this ego that is me, then we become the Jivatma. So when we meditate, we try to reconnect with the Godhood of ourself within. We look inside, not
Sure.
outside. And the process you are following, it's kind of similar, that through meditation and all the aspect of it, you are trying to reconnect with that Godhood within yourself. That,
But
and
I
he
just
may
want to
try
point
to,
out,
he also that kind of also he is kind and love you, so
well,
he
wait,
tried to connect
hang
to
on,
you
time
as
out,
well.
time out, hold on. You're talking about, and meditation, of course, is an action where you're doing something that you get a result from. Near-death experiences are not that.
Yes.
They didn't choose to have the experience. It happened. But they're reporting what happens during the experience. And then I'd like to point out in the data, the research of the thousands of clinical case studies from hypnotherapists like Dr. Helen Wamba. She had 3,000 clients that she studied. Dr. Brian Weiss, she eliminated bias in her studies. Dr. Brian Weiss, very famous, Many Lives, Many Masters. He's had 4,000 clients. Michael Newton had 7,000 clients before he wrote Journey of Souls. And the Newton Institute continues to collect. They have 85,000 reports. And what do the reports say? They say consistently that we exist fully prior to incarnation, that we choose the lifetime we're going to experience, but we only bring a portion of our conscious energy to the lifetime. The average is between 20 and 40%. So while we're here, the brain has filters that block the awareness that's going on off stage. Our Akashic library, our guides, our teachers, our friends, people we've incarnated with forever. All that information is blocked from us because while we're on stage, we only have this ability to see what's in front of us generally, unless you take hallucinogens, unless you have a near-death experience, unless you have an out-of-body experience, unless you do hypnotherapy, unless you do a meditation. That's an action towards finding something. You're bypassing the filters. So I'm talking about physiologically on the human brain. It's like a stereo receiver. The way you block out unwanted sound, chatter, police signals, is you have filters or limiters that block that information. So you're only getting the information you're interested in or that you want to, use. However, as I'm demonstrating, some people can bypass those filters using hypnotherapy, using meditation. And I'll tell you, it's fascinating because I've also done guided meditations with people from India who have a strong belief in Hindus mostly, and they're startled, shocked, and surprised when they start to talk to their relatives off stage, meaning grandma, grandfather, father, mother, brother, sister, when they talk to the people off stage because they have an awareness of how things work. And they tell them, what you're getting is just part of the picture. You're only getting part of the channel of this television. You're getting like one channel, which is the Earth and our experience on Earth. But there's all this other information that we can access. But at the baseline, it's that in the book Divine Counsels in the Afterlife, I had somebody who was a skeptic ask or who is God? And the answer was from a guide: God is beyond the capacity of the human brain to comprehend. It's not physically possible, they said, like too much information for the computer to handle. But they continued, however, you can experience God by opening your heart to everyone and to all things. And this person who was answering is not a religious person. This was like an Akashic librarian. No reference to any religion. He was giving a mathematical formula. If you want to experience God, you can do it while you're on the planet by opening your heart to everyone. Well, that's unconditional love, empathy, compassion for everyone. But he also added, and for all things. And you think, what does he mean by that? And it's because things are a form of consciousness. Atoms agreeing to hold space that we perceive while we're on stage. Everything that's around us is part of this huge construct that we've helped create. And so if I was going to differ or beg to differ with any religious belief system, and that includes Christianity, it includes every religious system, it's that the data shows that we choose to be here, that we agreed to be here, that we come to teach lessons or learn lessons, and some of them are difficult and some of them are profound, but it continues on in a logical way, because all the information that we're getting here today, you and I speaking, our higher selves, our guides, our teachers, our councilmen, all of those folks are listening and aware of what we're talking about. You know, and that's why they put us together, so we can have this conversation to talk about the thing that I hear the most in this research, and it's so important to hear, but nobody hears it. I hear it all the time. Everything is going to be okay. And whatever that means to anyone, the fear, the worry, the stress, the loss, the grief, those are all temporary experiences, because everything is going to be okay eventually, because we planned it this way. You and I talked on the flip side, our higher selves, and said, hey, why don't you guys have a conversation? Rich has been to Delhi. He enjoys going to Delhi. Delhi's a great place. I just looked it up. Well, before we started, I looked up your address where you are now. And I've been on that
to meet you in
times.
Person then.
Yeah, there you go. We can go out and have a lot of chaiwala. We can have a chaiwala bring us lots of chai, which would be fun. You know, and I think we forget to mention that I'm a Bollywood filmmaker. I made a Bollywood film in Juhu with Neha Dubey and all these other stars, Indian stars. I had a great time. Living and hanging out in Juhu, and learning how to, do all that stuff that you do. Then the music involved.
Yes.
Anyway, I wasn't thinking about them. I'd have their names in front of me, but anyway. The movie was called My Bollywood Bride, based on a true story.
Maybe I seen it.
Well, it was eventually called something else, My Faraway Bride. We screwed up the title. But it was based on a true story. I might have mentioned it in the last podcast, which was my good friend, Manjula Nanavati, who I went to USC Film School with.
Yes, you have mentioned her.
Yeah, and her father was a benefactor, and he knew Mother Teresa. And there's a hospital, I think, in Delhi that's got his name on it. Mr. Nanavati, really wonderful guy. And Manjula and I were close friends, very close friends. And when I met her at film school, I was like, who is this person? I must stay in touch with her. And then she moved back to Mumbai, and we used to write postcards to each other. Then she got married, and her husband, very famous producer, Ronnie Screwvala. And then they separated at some point, but their daughter went to USC Film School, and I kind of helped because I knew somebody and I happened to be at USC one day and I was like, oh, this filmmaker's great. Anyway, so she's very talented as well. What can I say? I've been to Delhi maybe, I don't know, maybe about 6 times, something like that. Quite a few. And I always learn something. I was there when
So a
Princess
seventh time
died.
won't hurt you much.
Well, Princess Diana passed away while I was there. And that was like the news. Everybody in the
That's a long
country
time
was going
ago
to
then.
that. Yeah, and I can remember there was a big scandal about Tehelka, the newspaper
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
finding
yeah.
out corruption. And they actually caught these guys taking tons of rupees, at bribery. And when I came back like 3 or 4 years later for a film festival, those guys were all still in office. None of them got fired. And what are you going to do? That's the story of politics. And I came back. I was in part of the Digital Talkies Film Festival because I brought my film camera, which was one of the Dogma film, shot all on digital cameras. One of the famous movie directors introduced the festival. Digital talkies, digital films. You've been seeing a few digital films in your day, haven't you?
I
Not so
don't
much.
understand the term digital films. What do you mean by that?
Well, just feature films, movies, right? 30. Usually they're shot in 35 millimeter film, and around 2001 they had a movement. It was called Dogma, Dogme, 95, and I was one of 28 films that were
Maybe I
made.
seen a few of them, but didn't realize that it's called that
Yeah, you may
dogma
have seen.
terminology.
I'm sure. The it's funny. Festin was the
I
first.
can't be certain, but I definitely seen the Runaway Bride. I think I can't remember the story much.
My Bollywood
I
Bride.
have,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
let's see. My
my
Bollywood
Bollywood.
Bride. Yeah. It was funny because I was shooting in the streets of Delhi. Was shooting second unit, meaning because I wasn't directing the film. It was funny because the producer and I had a falling out, and I said, you know what, find another director, but I'll stay and I will shoot. I'll help you with the script, and I will shoot all the second unit. So I got a chance to shoot, the streets of Mumbai, like a couple of oxen walking down the street, but carrying giant screen TVs on a cart. That juxtaposition of old and new, the things that you can see in Delhi you can't see anywhere else in the world. But yeah, so Sanjay Suri was in the film. Gulshan Grover, of course, he's in every movie. He played the bad guy. S. Chandler was very funny. Kashmir Shah and Jason Lewis was a big star at the time, let's say. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. And we shot, what year was that? That was in 2007. Actually, I think I was shot in 2005 or 4, and it didn't come out till 2007. Isn't that funny? It
Quite
was
a while
based on
ago.
a true story. I don't know if I mentioned that, but what happened was I met Manjula at USC Film School, and like I said, we used to write postcards. And so what I did was, and then I came to India with Robert Thurman, Uma's father, the former Tibetan monk. We were traveling up in, we flew into Delhi and then we went up to Ladakh. We were in Leh. We went to Hemis, the monasteries. And I had an option to fly out of somewhere. And so I decided to fly out of Mumbai. And while I was in Mumbai, somebody said to me, Richard, why did you come here? And I said, well, I met this beautiful girl when I was going to SC, and I always wonder what happened to her. What was her life? And the guy at the dinner table said, what's her name? I said, Manjula, and she had a, different maiden name. He said, I don't know her, but he said, there's a billion people in India. There's a lot of Manjulas. But somebody else at the table said, I know Manjula Nanavati, and
So
let me
Richard,
see.
let's share your experience of that human connection. Like we meet people, it's kind of you already talking about that stage where we choose to, certain
Well,
perspective of
that's
our
what the movie
lives.
is, you see. So the movie is about a guy who meets a girl and they fall in love, and then she has to go back home to India. But she says to him, "If we're supposed to meet, we will. It's fate, kismet." And that's what and then he just comes to India to find her, and he finds her, and she turns out she's a Bollywood movie star, and they fall in love, and that's the happily ever after. But yes, why do people meet? I'll tell you a story. It's in our podcast last week, Hacking the Afterlife podcast on YouTube. And it's the story about a door. There was a door in my family home growing up in the kitchen. If you came into our house, you would have to stand against the door, and we would take a pencil and draw how tall you were, the date, and you'd sign it when you came into our house. So the door had hundreds of names. After my parents passed away, my brothers decided we were going to sell the house. And so it was like, well, everything's going to go, except somebody said, "Hey, I'll hold on to the door. Why don't you let me hold the door?" Because they knew it was important. And that person passed away about a month ago. And I got a call from her sister who said, "Hey, are you interested in the door?" Because it's been sitting in her house for all these years, since 2011. And so my brother went and picked up the door, and so now it's in his garage. But that door represents a time frame of everyone I've ever met. All of the lovers and friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever it is, children, children of children, our dog, our pets, they're all on the door. So it's almost like a frequency of who we are always exists outside of time. And so the people that you meet in your life, my trips to India, the people that I know, people that I met in film school, they still exist in real time. We're just not aware of it because we move on through the stage that we're in, but they still exist. And the door becomes this metaphor for everyone that has been in my life. And I think we all have that. It's my Akashic library brought to life of this particular lifetime. So, and people think of the Akashic library as someplace that very difficult to get to, and you need to have somebody guide you. It's not true. Every guided meditation I do, I say, can we go to this person's library? And we're there. And then I ask the librarian to come forward, and I don't see the librarian, but they do. Librarian comes forward, almost always the same one. These people don't know each other, but they're saying, "Oh, I'm seeing this woman, and she's wearing these glasses with these things on her that go around her neck, and she's wearing her hair in a bun." And I say to the librarian, "Do you know me, Richard?" And the librarian inevitably says, "Yes, Richard, we spoke last week." And then I ask the librarian to take a book out of this person's lifetimes and hand it to them. Then I have them describe what they're seeing. And then I have them open the book. And I say, please have them open the book to an important event that they need to see today. Sometimes it's an event in this lifetime, something that happened when they were a kid, some tragic thing, some funny thing, a moment of lightheartedness. But sometimes they're in different lifetimes. And this one woman said, it's like the 1500s, and I'm walking through Europe, like a European forest. I'm carrying an axe. I'm like a woodsman cutting trees. And I'm walking through the woods, and then I ask what happened, and why is this important? And while she was walking, she suddenly saw a mythological creature in her path. This man, the woodsman, saw a fairy floating in the air with wings, glowing. Now, I want to say they do show up in the research sometimes. But the question then was, why was this important for you to show this person? And the woman heard, it's important to remember that there's magic in every lifetime. Things you don't understand. But it reminds you that there's magic. There's things that happen that we don't understand, but they're spiritual, they're wonderful. And that person needed to see that in that lifetime. And this person now, today, has to remember that there is magical, talking to your loved ones, having a dream where somebody you love shows up and laughs with you. It's magic.
So
So
magic will happen whether you are initiated to any philosophical deep
there you go.
understanding or not. So that's I
That's
will
it.
ask the viewers to keep in mind. And so let's end this session for today then.
Well, again, let me thank your viewers for taking the time to listen to me talk about the research and the data,
Yes. Yes.
not my opinion, not my belief. And I try to let everybody see whatever it is they're supposed to see, and I try to let everybody hear what they're supposed to hear. And if it bothers you in any way, then let it go. It's not something someone has to adhere to. But the point is, everything's going to be okay. Life goes on, and it's going to be all right. And your loved ones do want you to talk to them. It doesn't have to be a deity that you talk to. Just talk to grandma. She's going to give you more advice anyway, and you won't be startled to see her. You would be startled if you saw somebody that you were like, oh my gosh, there's, that person. Don't focus on them, focus on someone you love, because you will get that information that love is all there is.
Love is all there is. Beautiful. Thank you so much.